In 1943, Albania had a Jewish population of about 200. By 1945, it had nearly 2,000. Every other country in Europe saw its Jewish population shrink during the Holocaust. Albania's grew tenfold because Albanians, Muslim and Christian alike, took in Jewish families from across Europe, hid them, fed them, gave them their own beds and slept on floors, forged documents, lied to the Nazis, not as an underground network, not as a government program, as individuals, because their moral code, a 600-year-old set of laws called the Kanun, says that a guest in your home is under the protection of God and your family's honor. Turning someone away is worse than dying. Not one Jewish refugee was handed over from Albanian soil. Not one. This is a country the size of Maryland, 3 million people. Most of the world can't find it on a map, and it has the cleanest conscience in Europe. Let's start with what they put on the table for those guests. And in Albania, if there's no byrek on that table, the guest hasn't really arrived. In Albania, a woman's reputation once rested on the thickness of her pastry. Not thin, not flaky, not whatever a French chef would say, thin enough to read a newspaper through. That was the standard. If the dough wasn't translucent, if you couldn't hold it up and see words on the other side, you went back to the table and started over. Byrek. Layers of hand-stretched phyllo dough, filled with spinach, feta cheese, tomatoes, or ground meat, rolled, spiraled, or stacked in a pan the size of a car wheel, and baked until the top crackles when you breathe on it. Every Albanian grandmother has her own version. Every version is correct. Every other version is wrong. This is not debated. This is understood. The dough comes from flour, water, and oil, nothing else. No yeast, no butter, no shortcut. A woman works it on a wooden table with a long, thin dowel, a okulaji, rolling and stretching until it drapes over the edges like a bedsheet. One tear and you start over. 2 tears and you question your lineage. In the mountains, byrek traveled with shepherds, wrapped in cloth, stuffed in a satchel, eaten cold at altitudes where nothing else survived the hike. It's breakfast, it's lunch, it's the thing waiting for you when you walk through any Albanian door, because in Albania, you don't ask a guest if they're hungry. You already know. They are. You were ready. France has the croissant. Turkey has the byrek. Albania has a grandmother who can stretch dough thin enough to read through and has been doing it since before either of those countries had an opinion. Albania feeds you before you ask, but what it pours, that's where the conversation really starts. In Albania, every serious conversation begins the same way. A bottle appears, clear, unmarked, homemade. The man pouring it doesn't ask if you want any. That was decided when you sat down. Raki, grape brandy, distilled in copper stills that have been in the family longer than the house. Every Albanian family either makes raki or knows someone who does. The ones who buy it from a store don't talk about it. The first glass is for greeting. The second is for talking. The third is for the truth. After the fourth, you're family. After the fifth, you're making promises you'll somehow keep. Raki isn't strong by Albanian standards, roughly 40%, but it's relentless. It comes with food, always. To drink raki without eating is considered barbaric, so the meze appears. White cheese, olives, roasted peppers, walnuts, cured meat. The table fills, the glasses refill, nobody counts. There's a word for this in Albanian, sofra, the gathering around the table. It doesn't mean dinner, it means the hours that happen around dinner. The jokes, the arguments, the stories your uncle has told 40 times that somehow get funnier. Sofra is Albania's living room, therapist, and parliament all rolled into one. In Russia, vodka is a dare. In Albania, raki is an invitation, and the table never closes. Albania's table never closes, but the code that governs who sits at it, that's older than most European nations. There's a word in Albanian that has no exact translation in any other language. Besa. It means to keep the promise, but that doesn't capture it. Besa is the idea that your word is a physical thing, more heavy than a contract, more binding than law, more permanent than blood. If you give Besa, you will die before you break it. Your family will die before they let you break it. During World War II, when the Nazis demanded lists of Jewish residents, Albanian families didn't just refuse, they gave Besa. They swore on their honor, on their family name, going back generations, that these strangers were under their protection. A Muslim farmer in the mountains hid a Jewish family from Belgrade for 2 years, fed them from a pantry that barely fed his own children. When the Germans came searching, he said, "They are my guests. You will have to kill me first." They left. Besa isn't hospitality. It's not generosity. It's a debt you take on the moment someone enters your life, and the repayment is your entire reputation. In Albania, a man without Besa is a man without a name. His children carry the shame. His grandchildren inherit it. The Kanun, the ancient code of law that governed Albanian mountain life for centuries, dedicates entire chapters to Besa. A guest's safety is worth more than the host's life. A promise made under Besa cannot be undone by war, government, or time. In America, a promise lasts until it's inconvenient. In Albania, a promise lasts until you're dead, and sometimes longer. Besa is the promise, but walk through an Albanian city at dawn and you'll see a country that doesn't look anything like its reputation. "6 a.m., Tirana. The prime minister who changed this city was a painter, and you can tell because half the buildings are bright pink or orange, or striped in teal and yellow like a children's book decided to become architecture. In 2000, Tirana was gray, Soviet gray, the kind of gray that makes concrete look optimistic. Decades of communism had drained the city of everything: color, money, hope, paint. Then Edi Rama, the mayor, a 6'5" artist with no urban planning degree, started painting buildings, just painting them, bright, absurd, defiant colors. International organizations complained. The EU said it was cosmetic. He said, "We have no money, we have paint." The crime rate dropped. Tax collection went up. People started cleaning the sidewalks in front of their own shops. Nobody fully explains why, but something about living in color made people act like the city was worth caring about. Today, Tirana moves like a city still figuring out what it wants to be. A man sells espresso from a cart for 30 cents, better than anything in Rome, and he'll fight you if you disagree. Old men sit in parks playing dominoes with the intensity of war strategists. A Mercedes from 1994 shares the road with a Lamborghini, and neither driver seems surprised. Albania has more cafes per capita than almost anywhere in Europe, one cafe for every 152 people. And they don't drink it to go. They nurse a single espresso for 3 hours. Not because Albanians are leisurely, because Albanians do business at coffee tables. Marriages have been arranged over macchiatos. Political careers have ended between the second and third espresso. In Paris, a cafe is aesthetic. In Tirana, a cafe is an office, a courtroom, and a confessional, and the coffee is better. Tirana painted itself back to life. But just 2 hours south, there's a city that hasn't changed in 300 years and doesn't intend to. The roofs are made of stone. Not tile, not thatch, not slate. Flat, gray stone, cut from the mountain the city's built into, laid in overlapping slabs that have survived earthquakes, invasions, and 600 years of weather without a single renovation. Gjirokastër, a UNESCO World Heritage City carved into a mountainside in southern Albania. Every house is a fortress, walls 2 feet thick, windows narrow as rifle slits, stone staircases spiraling up through towers that families once defended with their lives. This isn't decoration, this is architecture born from a simple truth. In Albania, for most of history, someone was coming to kill you. The Ottomans, the Greeks, your neighbor's cousin. The house was built to survive all of them. Inside, the homes open up, wide wooden floors, carved ceilings, fireplaces in every room, a warmth that contradicts everything the exterior promises. The Albanian home was always 2 things, a fortress on the outside, a feast on the inside, exactly like the people. Ismail Kadare, Albania's most famous writer, nominated for the Nobel Prize repeatedly, was born here. He wrote about Albania the way Garcia Marquez wrote about Colombia, with love, anger, and the understanding that his country's greatest stories were the ones nobody outside had ever heard. Gjirokastër has barely changed since the 18th century. The same stone, the same streets, the same rooftops that look from above like a dragon's spine running down the mountain. In Rome, they preserve ruins behind glass. In Gjirokastër, people still live in them. The ruins don't know they're ruins, neither do the people. Gjirokastër built itself to survive, but the man who nearly destroyed all of Albania wasn't a foreign invader. He was Albanian. In 1967, Albania became the first and only officially atheist state in human history. Not secular, atheist. The government didn't separate church and state, it demolished the churches and the mosques and the monasteries, outlawed religion entirely, made it a crime to own a Bible or a Quran, a crime to say a prayer, a crime to name your child after a saint. The man responsible was Enver Hoxha, communist dictator, ruled Albania from 1944 to 1985, paranoid in ways that make other dictators look well-adjusted. Hoxha believed everyone was coming to invade: NATO, the Soviet Union, China, Yugoslavia, the sea. So he built bunkers. Not a few bunkers, not military bunkers at strategic points. 170,000 bunkers across a country of 3 million people, one bunker for every 18 citizens. Concrete domes, mushroom-shaped, steel-reinforced, scattered across every beach, every hillside, every schoolyard, every farmer's field, from the Greek border to the Adriatic coast, a country the size of Maryland, carpeted in concrete paranoia. Nobody ever invaded. The bunkers were never used, not once. Today, they're still there. You can't demolish them. Hoxha built them too well. They dot the landscape like gray mushrooms growing out of a fever dream. Farmers plant tomatoes around them. Children use them as clubhouses. One was turned into a tattoo parlor, another into a cafe. One in Tirana was converted into a museum, documenting the horrors of the regime that built it. Albania's greatest monument is also its greatest scar. 170,000 concrete domes that protected against an enemy that never came. Hoxha built bunkers for enemies that never came. But the thing that actually protected Albania, the thing nobody could bomb or outlaw, was a set of rules carved into a mountain 600 years ago. For over 500 years, Albania was governed by a code of law that was never written down. The Kanun of Leke Dukajini, 12 books, thousands of provisions, covering everything from marriage to murder, property to hospitality, honor to livestock. All of it memorized, passed from father to son, recited by village elders who served as judges, juries, and living law libraries. No courtrooms, no lawyers, no paper. Just a man sitting on a rock reciting rules from memory, and the entire village obeying, because everyone knew the Kanun was older than the government, older than the Ottomans, older than the church. Some of its laws are extraordinary. A guest in your home is sacred, even if that guest is your worst enemy. If someone asks for shelter, you give it, feed them, protect them with your life. You don't ask why they came. You don't ask when they're leaving. Some of its laws are brutal. Jakmaria, the blood feud. If a man kills another man, the victim's family has the right, the obligation, to kill a male member of the killer's family, not the killer, any male, a brother, a cousin, a son. The cycle repeats, generation after generation. Some blood feuds in northern Albania lasted centuries, families locked in houses for decades because stepping outside meant a bullet, children who never went to school, men who never left a single room. As recently as the 2000s, an estimated 10,000 Albanians were still trapped indoors by active blood feuds. The code that saved thousands of Jews also imprisoned thousands of Albanians. Besa and blood in the same book, protection and punishment in the same sentence. The Kanun is not a contradiction, it's a mirror. It shows what happens when honor becomes law, the most beautiful and the most terrible things a community can do. The Kanun protected and punished, but once a year, Albania remembers something older and gentler, and the whole country smells like spring. On March 14th, Albania celebrates the oldest pagan holiday still observed in Europe, Dita e Veres, the Day of Summer. Not the start of summer. Summer is still months away, but Albanians don't wait for the calendar. When the almond trees bloom and the air loses its edge, that's summer enough. The rest is paperwork. The celebration centers in Elbasan, a city in central Albania, but the whole country joins. Children wear red and white bracelets called verore, twisted thread tied to the wrist and worn until the first stork arrives. When you see the stork, you hang the bracelet on a tree. If the stork takes it, good luck follows. If a bird builds a nest with it, even better. Your fortune apparently depends on the interior design choices of a stork. The main dish is balakume, a dense, golden cookie made from corn flour, butter, eggs, and sugar. The recipe is absurdly simple. The execution is not. Balakume must be made in massive copper pans over low heat, stirred constantly for hours. Too fast and it burns, too slow and it crumbles. The women who make it treat the process with the focus of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. Streets fill with music, dancing, bonfires. Children chase each other with flowers. Old women sell balakume from baskets. The town square becomes a stage, and everyone in it becomes a performer. In the West, spring gets a sale at the hardware store. In Albania, spring gets a feast, a bonfire, and a stork-based fortune-telling system that nobody questions. Dita e Veres isn't about the season changing. It's about the country deciding, collectively, stubbornly, loudly, that the dark is over, whether the weather agrees or not. Albania celebrates summer before it arrives, but the fact I'm about to tell you, the one about what happened after the wall fell, this one stopped me cold. In 1997, Albania collapsed. Not slowly, not over years, in weeks. After decades of communist isolation, Albania opened to the free market in 1991. But nobody knew how markets worked. There were no banks, no financial education, no regulatory system. Into that vacuum came the pyramid schemes. Ponzi operations, disguised as investment firms, offered returns of 50% a month, sometimes 100%. Money poured in. Albanians sold their homes, sold their livestock, sold everything. Some families invested their entire life savings, every lek they'd earned since communism fell. At its peak, the pyramid schemes held an estimated $1.2 billion in a country whose entire GDP was only $2 billion. 2/3 of the population had money invested. The government knew. Some officials profited. Nobody stopped it. In January 1997, the pyramids collapsed. Overnight, a nation's savings disappeared. People who had sold their houses had nothing. The government fell. The army dissolved. Weapons depots were looted. Over 500,000 firearms flooded the streets. Albania entered a state of civil anarchy. Nearly 2,000 people died in the violence that followed. The international community watched, mostly confused. This was Europe. This was 1997, and an entire country had lost everything to the same scam a teenager can explain in 30 seconds. Albania rebuilt. Again. From nothing. Again. The generation that survived it doesn't talk about it much, but they teach their children one lesson. If someone promises you something for nothing, remember 1997. So what kind of country survives a dictator, 1,000 bunkers, and a scam that stole everything, and still sets a place at the table? So what is Albania? A country that stretched dough thin enough to read through and fed a stranger before feeding itself. That poured raki for a guest and didn't stop until the guest became family. That kept a 600-year-old promise when every country around it broke theirs. A country that was painted gray for 40 years, and the first thing it did when freedom came was pick up a paintbrush. That buried 170,000 bunkers into its own skin and then planted tomatoes around them. That lost everything to a scam and rebuilt without asking anyone's permission. 170,000 bunkers, not one invader. 2,000 Jewish refugees, not one betrayed. Albania is the smallest country we've covered, 3 million people. A language that belongs to no family. A coastline that rivals Greece's and costs a tenth of the price. A history that includes every kind of horror Europe has produced, and a response to that horror that most of Europe couldn't match. Albania teaches something older, that keeping your word when nobody's watching, when the cost is everything, when the world has forgotten you exist, is the most beautiful thing a country can do. There's no Albanian word for what Albania is, but Besa comes close. A promise made to strangers, kept by a country of 3 million people, against empires, dictators, and the kind of loneliness that comes from being erased from every map that mattered. Albania was never famous. Albania was never powerful. Albania was never the one anyone was watching. But when the knock came, Albania opened the door. Every time. Every country has a story. I found it. If you liked it, like and subscribe.